welcome to the Module 10 Artifact Workshop. This video is to discuss Part 1 and Part 2 of Module 10 Artifact. This is a summative artifact and it is an application task to show your understanding of the science of teaching reading. It has two parts and you have to turn in one single document for the two parts. There are two parts to this assignment. The first thing that you need to do is you need to download the lesson. You can choose between kindergarten and third grade. Please note that there are English lessons and there are Spanish lessons as well. You would also need to download this document, and this link is going to lead you to this chart. This chart, Effective Instruction Walkthrough, Explicit Systematic Instruction, has the items pertaining to explicit and systematic instruction that you have to look for in Part 1. You only have to identify 3 of these items for your Part 1. Once you have identified your 3 items, you have to name the practice, include evidence from the lesson, and explain how it helps students to learn the skill of the lesson. These are your 2 lessons, and this is the worksheet that it's going to help you identify explicit and systematic instruction for the first part. This picture in here is not the real lesson. It is a random lesson that I pulled to show you how you can align the lesson to the explicit and systematic instruction items. The process will look like something like this. I have my lesson, I identified the practice, and I did a response with the 3 items. Here's another example. I named the practice, I included the evidence, and I explained how this part of the systematic and explicit instruction helps the students to learn the skill of the lesson. You need to have in here 3 to 4 examples to get full credit. Now we're going to talk about Part 2. I have split Part 2 in Part 2A and Part 2B. So we are going to address right now Part 2A. For the second part of this lesson, you have to analyze the student response included in the lesson packet in a short paragraph of 300 words or less. If you look at the assignment, it gives you around 20 questions that you have to focus on. My advice is do not try to address all the guiding questions. Synthesize your ideas. If you try to address each and single question, your paragraph won't be 300 words. For this part, they will provide you with a student sample. It'll be something similar to what we have in here. This is not the right sample. This is a random sample, not the real lesson. So in one short paragraph, you have to write an analysis of the student's strengths, areas of growth, and a recommendation for instruction. Use the questions to guide your thinking. Please note that you only have to do one recommendation for instruction, and that recommendation for instruction will be later on used to develop a lesson. This is an example of how you can develop your response. Please note that this is not a real response. This is a simulated response for the purpose of this presentation. Note that I have the student's strengths in here, then quickly I address the weaknesses, and then I go into one recommendation for instruction. Be concise and straight to the point. We can only have 300 words. Now we will be talking about Part 2B of the artifact. In Part 2B, you have to prepare a scripted, explicit, and systematic instruction lesson to teach the literacy concept to this student one-on-one. In the script, you have to clearly state the objective, give a concrete example of the concept or strategy, give example of how students will be able to practice, and identify a way to give feedback to the student, both corrective and affirmative feedback. The structure of this lesson is very similar to the structure of the lesson for Module 6. Since the artifact requires us to use the gradual release of responsibility model, you have to split your lesson in 3 parts: I do, we do, and you do. You have to state the learning objective, give a concrete example of the concept or strategy. You have to provide an example of the student practice, and you have to provide feedback. Remember that you can only use 300 words. Please be mindful that this lesson has to be aligned. The final task or the you do has to be aligned to the objective of the lesson. At the end of your work, your final product may look like this. You can choose to use a chart or you can choose to use bulleted points, but your final product has to be one single document. After you're done with the lesson, you can score your own lesson using the rubric. Submit your draft through the optional draft assignment tab. After you submit your draft, I can give you feedback and I can help you modify your artifact so you get a grade of 80% or more. Please reach out with any questions. I hope you have a great day and that this video was helpful.